So, the Fallout TV show. I'll cut right to the chase with this. There's no excuse why an adaptation of a series like Fallout should be this trash or be as highly regarded as it has been. A lot of gaslighting has been in play with this show, mostly from Bethesda fans and quite a few shills, but also from several higher-profile content creators. Of course, like any show with a high budget and brand recognition behind it, there were going to be tourists coming to see the new thing, and they came by the thousands. With them came their lack of understanding of Fallout as a series, helping to elevate its status to, quote, one of the best adaptations ever made, unquote. Any genuine scrutiny would prove otherwise, but where have I seen that genuine scrutiny? Only from fans who know the differences between the Black Isle and Obsidian games, and Bethesda's games, who don't default to the turn-your-brain-off excuse, and who aren't interested in content farming or shilling for a large company. A lot of this reminds me of when Fallout 4 released. At that time, thousands were set on holding the game up as a great next step, despite how soon after release the game was picked apart, and its flaws laid bare. Flaws aside from the ones that were obvious before release, that is. The Fallout show was also picked apart within days, revealing several major retcons to previous games. There were also parts of the show's reception that reminded me of a video by Retroblasting, called Trashing the Classics, a video about fandoms trashing the original entries of an IP in pursuit of holding up more recent, and clearly worse, entries of said IP. Fallout has experienced this from Fallout 3 onward, with newer fans dismissing the originals as outdated or the like. When New Vegas came around, even though it was as good as the originals in terms of writing quality and range of choices, the tactic of the newer fans changed too. Without Fallout 3, you wouldn't have New Vegas. That may be true, but without the original Fallout games, these same new fans would not have their Fallout 3, or Fallout 4, or Fallout 76.
This game sucks.
Or the TV series. We could have had more than just that one spin-off game as well, but after New Vegas was finished, Bethesda made it clear they were not interested in letting other studios make Fallout games. And let's be honest, it's not because they thought it would keep quality consistent. Quality in Bethesda, unlike modding in Bethesda, are like oil and water. It's because Obsidian showed them up after they spent $6 million on the IP, and risking that again would not fly. As for the show itself, from what I saw, it was the kind of show I expected from Amazon and Bethesda. It wasn't something made to tell a good story by itself. It was made to sell a brand, which is what Fallout has become under Bethesda, to build Amazon's DIE score and Bethesda's as well, and to give Bethesda an excuse to retcon what Black Isle and Obsidian established for the West Coast. It's why when Todd Howard was being interviewed about the canonical status of the show, and he was asked what happened to Shady Sands, he gave a wishy-washy, uncommitted answer of, "Oh, New Vegas still happened," despite moments within the show that retconned events and major locations related to that particular game. In fact, by canonizing the TV series, Amazon and Bethesda have done to Fallout what Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, and Rian Johnson did to Star Wars with the sequel trilogy. That is, make everything that came before, including the accomplishments of the previous protagonists, meaningless by resetting the world to a previous state.
Let the past die. Kill it, if you have to.
We also have the words of the director as evidence of this. He was against the idea of progressing away from the retro-futuristic America that was destroyed by the Great War to another America that was civilized again. And since we never see or hear anything about Caesar's Legion in the show, even though his army was spread across most of Nevada, that left the NCR and what was related to it to get the axe. All this in mind, I can't see the show getting any better from here. No one involved with the show understands what makes Fallout good, and that includes Todd Howard and Emil Pagliarulo, both of whom were co-producers. What they did understand was how to sell Bethesda's Fallout iconography by itself, instead of a quality script first, with the Fallout iconography layered over it. In fact, here's a thought experiment. Think about some really good live-action shows you've seen from 2000 to 2009, and name at least 3. Mine would be 24, Jericho, and CSI. Now take an episode you liked out of any of those shows, and think about how you would splice in the Fallout iconography, with adjustments made to suit the setting, characters, etc. If what you just imagined felt more satisfying or interesting than any one episode of the Fallout TV show, there's your proof that it could have been done better. I believe we should have gotten a screenplay and characters on par with the first season of Jericho, which is post-apocalypse in genre. Instead, we got a show that comes across as Borderlands Light instead of Fallout, and even that is a bit of an insult because the original Borderlands was pretty good and fairly grounded. I guess that's what happens when your lead screenwriter had her hands in the 2018 Tomb Raider and Captain Marvel. She failed upwards, just like Maximus did in the show. On that note, I highly recommend Jericho Season 1 instead of Fallout. It's a much better show and was one of the reasons I disliked Fallout 3, even though back in 2008 I barely knew what Fallout was and what had inspired it. As for me, I'll stick with the original games and New Vegas going forward. Fallout 4 I'll revisit once Fallout London comes out. That should be quite a fun time. As a parting note, be mindful of bots in the comments sections of videos that are negative about the Fallout show, and those that are going to be negative about the upcoming Season 2. Several YouTubers have noticed this, even before the release of the show. In particular, Creetosis, and Synthetic Man. After Bethesda began boasting about 65 million views of the show, the frequency of these bot comments slowly dropped off, but because they existed in the first place, let me share a fun way to make these robots reveal themselves. Simply reply to an account you suspect of being a bot with a sentence that uses the name Adolf Hitler. Because the code basis of these chatbots is ChatGPT, which has pre-programmed responses to certain names, as Mr. Obvious shows in his tweet. The account will reply according to its bot programming and not like a real human. Not that anyone who is woke would be better than a bot in the first place, but moving on. I bring this up also because I've seen people saying they're disappointed that a show this stupid got a second season. I'm here to say it was going to get one by default. Any show with a huge budget or recognizable brand always will these days. Case in point, Velma. I don't need to say more, do I? And remember, Amazon still has 4 seasons left of The Rings of Power, and the first season was watched 100 million times. The hard truth is there are a lot of people out there with poor taste in media, or no taste at all. Those of us who do have taste and can see this show for what it is, the best we can do is correct the record everywhere we can, especially so when it comes to an IP like Fallout, which has gone through the ringer under Bethesda. And now with Amazon's series, some are so ignorant about the series and its themes that they think it actually is about haves and have-nots, rather than conflict and its inevitability. That's what the phrase "war never changes" means, and the show has no respect for the meaning behind the phrase. It's just something for the audience to react like this to.
I clapped when I saw it.
Of course, anyone with their finger on the pulse of current-day entertainment knows it's not about the quality of the product. It's about the message. And Fallout was just as involved in peddling it as Velma, Star Wars, Rings of Power, The Last of Us, and many more were. Emasculated and weak men are the norm in the show. Women are more assertive and often in powerful roles. Capitalism is portrayed as a cartoon villain while communism is shown only in a positive light. Diversity is the norm despite how genetics and biology work. And there are hints of pedophilia in some of Lucy's lines which already implied incest. In terms of the general public, what made all of this harder to notice wasn't how subtle it was, but because there was gaslighting going on about how Fallout has always had these themes and ideas, so this just makes sense. This is a blatant lie. But because the showrunners dialed the obvious DIE stuff back, casual viewers could more easily buy into this lie and believe it wasn't there. A sign of the times, I guess. This message peddling will not change with Season 2. If anything, given director Chris Nolan's history with Westworld, itself inspired by Fallout 4, and the final shot of the series with New Vegas in ruins, things are going to get much worse. Not just in terms of the message, but in terms of the series canon. Remember that video from Retro Blasting I mentioned? While Michael was talking about TV shows and movies in that video, I hold that his arguments also work when an IP is represented in other mediums, such as TV. And there are so-called fans, as well as chatbots, that see no issue with retcons that invalidate previous games. Example: Vault 33's entrance is very close to the Boneyard, what used to be Los Angeles, which is north of where the Master's Cathedral was in Fallout 1. And yet, he never found the 3 vaults or cracked it open to take the dwellers for his super mutant unity. Vault 4 is much the same, and if the events of Fallout 1 had occurred, the Master would have found them long ago and cleaned the vault out. But that's Bethesda, the company whose ex-marketing lead infamously said they're not going to be beholden to what someone wrote 20 years ago. In conclusion, don't think of this series as canon. Think of it as badly written fan fiction, as DIE fiction. Fitting in Bethesda's case for a company that hired Sweet Baby Inc., and which has 2 characters with the names Howard and Emil, essentially self-inserts, in the Fallout show. And for Amazon, a capitalism kingpin that could easily tell DIE types. They are nothing but poison, and should be shunned by anyone with a brain, but doesn't have the management in place to do it, and then stick to that. As for other creators who have touched on this show, here are my recommendations. Creetosis did a live watching of all 8 episodes with friends, all of which were good, and as I write this, he has a new video covering lore issues. Mahler has a video titled Fallout: A World on Fire, which is a marathon but really good. Synthetic Man's 2 videos on the series were a breath of fresh air early on. Enclave Emily also has a marathon video, a good one, and a few others I'll put in the description.